Our group's replication study was on decreasing excessive media usage while increasing physical activity, a single subject research study. During this presentation, we'll introduce each group member, discuss the original study, a literature review, the components of our treatment, and the results and limitations of our study.
Hello, my name is Sarah Brown. This is my third semester in the Ball State program, and I have an expected graduation date of July 2018. I'm a senior registered behavior technician at my clinic, and I have had this job since April 2016.
I'm Kitty Drake, and this is also my third semester at Ball State. I'm expected to graduate in May of 2019. I'm getting my master's in special education with an autism certificate. And currently I teach math at high school. I've been teaching for 24 years.
Hi, my name is Kelly Figel. This is also my third semester at Ball State. I'm expected to graduate in May 2019, and I'm a registered behavior technician. I work in the clinic setting, school setting, and home setting.
Hello, my name is Michelle Berry. My expected graduation date is December 2018. I am also a registered behavior technician, and a fun fact about me, I'm addicted to anime cartoons. Nice to meet you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Janine Amrine. I'm from Orlando, Florida. This is my second semester at Ball State. I'm an RBT in the clinical setting, and my expected graduation date is December of 2018. And I'm projected to sit for the BC ABA exam in November of this year.
Our original study was excessive media usage while increasing physical activity. The goal of our study was to increase physical activity and at the same time decrease media use. In order to do this, media and phone use was contingent upon physical activity. Data were collected on distance walked, speed walked, body mass composition, internet use, and phone use. Data were collected both by the participant and her parents. This data was then given to a research assistant who then compared the results. Our original study had three main phases. During the baseline phase, nothing was contingent. This period tracked physical activity in miles and phone and internet usage in minutes. During treatment phase 1, media use became contingent on the distance walked. For every mile the participant walked, she received 1 hour of recreational media use. The participant's use of media for school was not included in the contingency. During this phase, the student had the opportunity to earn additional recreational media time. For every additional mile walked, the participant was able to earn an extra hour of media time. The participant also tracked her phone usage. During this phase, phone usage was not contingent. During the second phase of treatment, both media usage and phone usage was contingent on distance walked. The minimum requirement moved up to 1.5 miles. When the participant met the minimum distance of 1.5 miles, she earned 1.5 hours of phone and/or media time. During the second phase of treatment, the participant was not given an opportunity to earn additional media time. Additional phone use, however, could be earned during the second phase of treatment. For every additional half-mile walked, the participant earned 30 additional minutes of phone use. The results of our study showed a significant increase in the participants' distance walked between phases. The data also showed a significant decrease in media use. In addition to this, the participant also reported a decrease in her body mass composition. The participant dropped 3.2 BMC units.
According to Ahmadi et al. 2017, increased screen time was associated with negative sleeping habits and decreased exercise related to sleep fragmentation. Poor physical activity can cycle back to poor sleeping habits, which would contribute to less energy to exercise.
Another follow-up study we found had to do with physical activity, the association between screen time and physical activity in adolescents. Increasing physical activity in children and adolescents is one of the major public health strategies to reduce obesity and its associated morbidity. Sedentary screen time is the main contributor to total inactivity in children and adolescents. And screen time doesn't just include TV, it includes computer time, video games, and many consoles. Participation in organized physical activity in sports can counteract the negative impacts of screen time on physical activity. A third study had to do with the effects of contingent television on physical activity and television viewing in obese children. And it's been shown that the prevalence of childhood obesity has increased substantially in recent decades. Behavioral interventions have been effective in producing both short and long-term weight loss in obese children. In this study, the goal was to use the reinforcing value of TV to increase physical activity. So they did not remove the TV. The TV was hooked up to a cycle or ergometer, and so the children had to pedal to activate the TV. So that they basically had to be working out in order to watch TV. And the results showed that contingent TV significantly increased physical activity and reduced TV viewing among participants.
The next two studies focus on contingencies, much like the one in our original study. Both of these articles focus on increasing physical activity by using reinforcement. This first study looks at increasing physical activity in healthy adults. This was done by using prizes as reinforcement. The participants were required to wear a Fitbit to track their steps. The criteria for each phase was selected using a percentile schedule. When the goal was met, participants received tickets that went into a prize drawing for the chance to win a preferred prize. Of the participants that finished the study, the results showed a dramatic increase in physical activity. The next study looks at increasing physical activity in children. This study also compared group contingencies against independent contingencies. In this study, the students received reinforcement contingent upon the number of steps walked. The steps were tracked individually and as a class as well. The results of the study showed that individual contingencies were more effective than group contingencies when increasing physical activity.
The purpose of our project is to develop a plan for participants to increase physical activity and decrease media usage by making the use of media contingent on performing physical exercise. The primary goal of this study is to make a lifestyle change involving more physical exercise. So in our study, all the participants were required to use a treadmill, and the treadmill could be located at the gym or any other location in your basement, perhaps at work. So any other location where a treadmill is available. We had to use a camera to take pictures. We also used our smartphones with Moment app for Apple users, or a smartphone with Quality Time for the Android users. And then we recorded our data on a data collection sheet.
There was a couple of things that we needed to change for our study based off the original. One of them would be removal of the BMC, body mass composition measurement instrument. We just simply didn't have access to this. The next would be reduced requirement of exercise to 3 times per week. In the original study, the participant was pretty much pushed to exercise every day. Working adults, we just kind of reduced that so people wouldn't feel the pressure. We also had to exclude work and school-related media usage. That also just wouldn't have worked out because we are all working adults and a lot of us use our phones or internet for things besides entertainment. Some even use it for work. So we couldn't really include that. So we had to subtract that off some of our times. Media usage was a combination of internet and phone usage. We didn't separate it. And also for either of our changes, there was no increased media usage for longer durations on the treadmill compared to the original study where she earned extra time media usage when she actually engaged in physical activity. Target behaviors of physical exercise was dependent on walking or running on the treadmill. This was defined as lifting of the feet and setting down flat in separation of each other at a typical and or atypical rapid pace on a treadmill while it's powered on. This did not include jumping, standing, or any other non-movement not typical on a treadmill. Media usage was defined as using cell phone for any form of communication, for example, phone calls, video chatting, messaging, but not games, calculators, timers, or any other non-communication apps, work, or school-related conditions, or the usage of internet, including looking up information, not work or school-related conditions. Our design was a single subject research design. Even though our study was kind of group contingent to some degree, it was more individualized. There was a lot of separation. We did collect our own data. We did monitor our own selves. So that's why we kind of concluded that it was still more of a single subject research design. Target behaviors were done with frequency, duration, and distance data. Frequency tracked how many times the treadmill was used per week, written down on our data collection sheet. Duration was time spent on treadmill, and distance walked, how many miles were achieved on the treadmill per session, and duration was also for media usage. And contingent on us, we had the decision to whether we wanted to track in minutes or hours, depending on what was easier for the individual.
For our treatment, we took baseline for a 2-week period. The week was defined as Monday to Sunday. During this time, no contingency was put into place, and we used the Moment app for people who have iPhones, and we used the Quality Time app if using an Android in order to record our phone and internet usage in minutes. During this phase, we only walked as far as we desired and tracked the frequency, speed, and distance, if any.
During treatment phase 1, we collected data for a 2-week period. We defined a week as Monday through Sunday. During this phase, each participant was required to select 3 days as their session days. The minimum criterion for phase 1 was 1 mile. When we, the participants, reached 1 mile on the treadmill, we received 1 hour of recreational media use. During this phase of treatment, we were allowed to earn additional recreational media use. Throughout our study, we did not make media use for school and or work contingent. We tracked our media usage on our phone using the app Moment and Quality Time. Our criterion to move to phase 2 was 3 consecutive sessions of 1 mile or more after 2 weeks of treatment. Phase 2 of treatment was the same length as phase 1. Just like in phase 1, we selected 3 days to use as our session days. For the second phase of treatment, the minimum distance required was 1.5 miles. When we reached 1.5 miles, we received 1.5 hours of recreational media use. This phase did not allow any opportunity to earn additional media time.
Our treatment fidelity checklist consisted of 5 main parts. The first was that we used equipment that was capable of accurately recording distance on the treadmill and a phone application that would track media usage during a certain time. Participants were also required to participate in at least 3 sessions per week, record data for each session, and record pictures for inter-observer agreement at least once a week. On the right, you can see screenshots of the Moment app. I took a screenshot of the app when I arrived home from work and other activities I did that day, and took another screenshot before I went to bed. This is how we recorded the recreational media usage durations. IOA was not taken in a traditional sense because we are distance education students and we needed to modify typical IOA procedures. We used pictures, many of which you have seen in this you will see in this presentation and screenshots of our media usage shared with the group as a way to take inter-observer agreement data. Since there were no disputes over pictures, our IOA data was 100%.
Okay, this is my data collection chart, and I collected data for each session. I recorded my distance run, and then on the days that I ran, I also recorded my media use. Since baseline, since we recorded every day for the first 2 weeks, or for the first week, that's why I had some 0 miles in there, because I ran probably about every other day. And then during phase 1, we only collected data from the days we ran or walked. And then phase 2, we only collected data from the days we ran and walked. I did fine on my distance. The thing that I really needed to work on was my media use. I probably use way too much social media. So this project did make me realize, by tracking my media, I've never actually tracked it before. So it's a real eye opener to see how much I really probably use my phone. So this is my graph for my distance run, and you can see it goes along with my table. So these are the graphs from distance run, a couple of treadmill pictures for our IOA. And then my graph for my media use, which is something that I really, really need to work on. So that is something I plan on working on in the future, even after this project is ended.
So this is my data. So as you can see, my data during baseline, I did not walk on the treadmill at all. Walking on the treadmill is not my typical form of exercise. During the first phase of treatment, my distance on the treadmill significantly increased from baseline. Once I met the criterion of having 3 consecutive sessions of 1 mile or more, I was then able to progress to the second phase of treatment. During the second phase of treatment, I met or exceeded the minimum distance. As you can see from the graph, I ended up on an upward trend. So this is a graph of my distance walked and a picture of my screen of my treadmill. And then the next graph shows my media usage. And as you can see from my media usage graph, there was a significant decline from baseline to treatment 1, and then not as much of a decline between treatment 1 and treatment 2.
Okay. So on the left is my media usage graph. As you can see, my baseline was pretty steady during the first 5 days, which was Monday through Friday. However, it was a lot higher on the weekends, session 6 and 7. These days, I also didn't go to the gym at all, as you can see on my distance graph on the right. Then during treatment phase 1, however, my distance on the treadmill increased, and I met criterion after the 2 weeks, having my final 3 consecutive sessions at 1 mile or over. And I also kept my media usage within that limit that I was given once I met the criterion. During this time, as well as treatment phase 2, I made sure not to increase my media usage of what was allowed. So it was kind of good for me to keep this, it gave me some sort of goal to set my media usage at, so it wasn't excessive as it was before.
Here's an overview of my data. I completed 23 sessions over a 5-week period. Every week I went to the gym 4 times. Overall, I complied with the contingency pretty well. I would typically go to the gym at the end of the day, so I tried to travel a farther distance on days when my media usage was higher.
Sorry.
Here are my graphs. Here are my graphs. Here are my graphs. You can see that during the baseline phase, I didn't engage in any physical activity on the treadmill. During phase 1, I was walking or running more than 1 mile every day and earned the allotted media usage time. In phase 2, I met the criteria by walking or running at least 1.5 miles every day, but I only met the media contingency on 4 of the 8 days I exercised in phase 2. Overall, I was more successful with following the contingency put into place for phase 1 than I was for phase 2 because there was not allowed extra media usage time in phase 2.
So when comparing my graphs, as you can see, my media usage was very high. I literally do everything on my phone, including watch movies, use the internet, social media. So when first starting this study, it was extremely difficult for me to monitor myself. For my baseline for media usage, as you can see, I even at one point reached up to 12 hours. And if you compare it to my exercise for that first week of baseline, I did not have any type of physical activity. I'm not very active, so I can't say that the study did technically push me. For treatment phase 1, I kind of began to go back up as far as media usage compared to my baseline, where I actually was starting to get some more stabilized data, and it seemed that it was just very hard for me to monitor just how much media usage I was using. So even moments where I was at work, I'd be on my lunch break on my phone and not realizing just how long that was on days I went to exercise. But on the plus side, I was able for phase 1 and phase 2 to remain consistent with my 3-day workout. I kind of made sure that I kept that in mind, that to make sure I exercise 3 days a week. So for phase 1 and phase 2, I stayed above the criterion for 1 mile and 2 mile. And if you were to compare my table, you can also see kind of just how high my media usage is. Then you see my baseline, and then you can go down and see that I did maintain over 1.5 miles for the remainder of the study. But it was just very hard for me to keep monitoring myself as far as my hours. I believe that was pretty much my downfall. So even though I was able to still continue exercising, it didn't really affect my media usage. I would say towards the end of phase 2 was kind of when I started to kind of decrease, but it definitely could have been better. And it definitely helped me to keep in mind that even though I am exercising more, that my media usage is very high. Like even now I'm still exercising, but I've noticed like I'm exercising and I'm watching something on my phone. So I can say that this study definitely helped me exercise more, but it still needed a little bit more. I still need a little bit more help on my media usage. And these are 2 pictures that are comparing just the distance I traveled, how long I ran that day, how many calories I lost, and an example of how my media usage was that it did start to decrease. It's just, it could have been a little bit better. The limitations for our study, there was definitely some things that could have potentially hindered us from possibly getting better results. There were some of us who had wonderful results, and there were others like me, for example, who still struggled. One of the biggest things was online learning, not being face-to-face. So it was very hard for some moments for us to meet each other. And sometimes we all had emergencies, and sometimes we had power outages, and it just kind of made it a little bit hard to get some of those details in because we are on different schedules and we all live in different states. The next limitation for us would be the exact replication of the study. I would say we did our very best to try to stay as close to the study as possible, but there were some things that just could not be replicated, and definitely including the body mass composition. It was just no way for us to still keep up with that. And then the idea of pushing exercise to 5 to 7 times per week was just a little bit excessive for many of us, especially since we all work. The adult versus teenager, I would personally say that this study would be more for a teenager because the original study focused on a teenager where parents were also a part of the study and would also remove media usage contingent on physical exercise. And as working adults, there's no one to come remove our media usage when we're not complying. There's no one to, if you go to my next point, to necessarily push media decreases. We can all try to monitor ourselves, but that didn't always work. Some work better than others. And there were many rearrangements that needed to be made. That's, as I included before, the BMC or reducing down the number of days. And it kind of really restricted us from really implementing the study exactly as how it should have been ran, excuse me.
So just some last minute conclusions to go over with our study. All in all, we learned a lot from the project. There were some things that worked for us and some things that we would consider changing if we did it again. Some things that worked were that as we are distance students, self-monitoring was definitely the best way to conduct this project and record our data, since we're, as Michelle said, we're adults with separate and busy lives. We can't meet very frequently, so the self-monitoring aspect did work very well. Also, the use of technology for IOA data, without the technology that we did use, we would not have been able to track IOA at all because we do live very far away from each other. Some things that we would change personally, I did not like the method that we use to track media usage. There are multiple kinds of media usage. Media counts, as internet that you're using on your phone, and just because you're not on Facebook on your phone doesn't mean it's on your computer. So I don't think that we necessarily got accurate counts. Also, one thing that I think I would have changed was maybe changing the initial criterion for the distance on the treadmill that was maybe based off of our baseline. Some of us run a lot more frequently than others do, so we probably should have not used the criterion that they used in the original study, but came up with our own criterion. And so I think one final thought is that motivating operations really played a big part in the success of this project. With the contingency of making media usage contingent on physical activity, that means that media usage has to be extremely reinforcing for you, and for some people it's not. So if we were to maybe do this study again, we would come up with a better reinforcer that would possibly encourage us to have more physical activity. Thank you for listening to our project.